we're back again for another episode of A Dose of Truth. It's always good to see you. And tell me, Olga, what do you want to cover today?
Thank you so much, Max. Likewise, always a pleasure. Welcome, Max. Welcome, everyone. And yes, tonight, well, another controversial topic, which would be medical experiments. We all know, or at least the idea which is being sold by mass media to us, that medical experiments on human are inhuman and not being conducted. So
Sorry.
sorry, I know. Having working in SRA field and having friends survivors who are till this day, and their children are being conducted to medical experiments. This smile, unfortunately, is a sad one. So yes, Max, being a survivor yourself again, and working with SRA survivors and MK Ultra survivors for decades for now, tell us, please. So, are medical experiments really that forbidden on humans, as mass media tell us?
No, and that's why I laughed. What a joke. Experiments are being done on all of humanity today. But to answer your question specifically, about what I know from being a survivor, I was myself experimented on in an underground facility in Rome. These facilities, like so many, they have a whole laboratory, this technology. They're really designed and set up to experiment on people, on animals. And in terms of satanic ritual abuse, and like you said, MK Ultra and Monarch programming, this is itself an experiment on the minds and the connection between the mind and body and the soul of human beings. And this is done daily. This is done all the time, still today. And there's so many experiments that I could not describe them all. But for example, the important ones, they have discovered that the use of trauma, particularly sexual abuse, leads the psyche to fragment in a specific way so that then the person can, first of all, dissociate the torture and the trauma, and also then have a fresh blank slate from the shock that they call a new alter, and that then they program that alter for specific tasks, whether it is to seduce, to be a sex toy, to be a super soldier, to be an assassin, you name it. Anything can be programmed. So these are very, very sophisticated psychological experiments, okay? They use different things like love bombing and then trauma, a good person and then the mean bad person. And they do, they have done these experiments in psychology, supposedly on animals, but they have done these on people. For example, with learned helplessness, the classic one that I studied, the dog who's put in a cage with an opening. There's two cages. They shock the bottom of one cage. The dog jumps into the other cage. They shock that one. After a while, both sides are being shocked. The dog gives up. And then when they stop shocking, doesn't even move, doesn't try and escape. They studied this on us, on me, on other children, to figure out how to create mind-controlled, compliant, apathetic people that will not try and escape anymore, will not try and fight anymore. So, they know the brain, they know the fight-flight system, they know the nervous system. And without going into detail, because there's too many experiments, they will experiment on this, on the mind, on the nervous system. What happens if we do this? What happens if we do that? Psychological experiments with impossible choices, like I was put through, or you either kill this person or you kill that. And what does that do to the person? So they have studied the psychology of the human being for, I'm going to say, not only decades, but centuries, to perfect mind control in the human population so that we will willingly obey their orders and not see what they're doing and not react. So there have also been, very horrific physical experiments. Some were done on me because my body had the ability to heal itself. So they would do things and see how quickly I could restore my body. There's experiments with virtual technology, putting a mask on you, earphones, doing things to different sides of the brain, like keeping your eyes artificially open, pumping something in the right part of the brain, and then a different thing in the left side to create fracturing. The right side of the brain is not verbal, so can contain a lot of things without the person then revealing them verbally, especially if they divide the two. So I know that's not super in depth, but I hope it kind of covers a range of things that I personally have experienced and seen in terms of experimentation.
Thank you, Max. If that's okay, just a short clarification. You have mentioned monarch programming. For many of our audience, I know that it's a completely new thing. So just a few words, please, about what monarch programming is.
Well, it's a spin-off from MK Ultra, and the name monarch comes from the monarch butterfly. So there's a lot of butterfly symbology, mainly because this particular butterfly can pass information down genetically to its offspring. And so a lot of the cult experiments, and especially like with sexual abuse, and they want to create very dissociated children and individuals. And so they learned that you can create this dissociation genetically. So as the previous generations are tortured and sexually abused, you can literally pass this down genetically to the children. So that was the main use of that symbol and that name. And this is done in so many ways. It is done to the children, the very children of these elite families, again, to create the kind of person and prepare them for their global roles later. Okay, they have to create the altars, the obedience, what all of that. And one kind of just that I will mention that's really disturbing is they begin to do these experiments in utero. So they will traumatize the baby with loud noises, with some physical violence that is not enough to kill the fetus, but is enough to traumatize it. They will insert things inside. They will electric shock. They will even speak to the fetus. And so it can begin in the womb. And then this happened to me with that I remember 2 pregnancies. They take the baby out prematurely. And so the premature is also for their experiments and their programming because there's certain factors that then make these babies even more useful because they're premature. And, if they die, then they die, but they're focused on which one can survive because then they can survive the rituals later. And a premature baby has a lot of pain, right? And organs that are not fully developed. And so then that is how they mix the nurturing with the pain. So they get the baby, they get the person already so habituated, and they don't care who dies. They're going to do this, and the strong that survive are the useful ones. So there are many, many other facets to that programming, but yes, it is essentially to create children that then grow up to be useful. They're useful as children, and then they may be useful also as adults. So they're basically trained through torture and dissociation.
Thank you, Max. So you have described explicitly, at least in our format of 30 minutes, of psychological mind control, also physical. But we have nowadays in our reality medical experiments that are being conducted on the entire population, mass populations. And we both know that many survivors were also subjected into experiments with variants of vaccines and so on. I personally know a survivor. She's a friend of mine who was subjected to drinking mercury, to drinking radiation, and to drink many other things to see how her body reacts, and all of that in combination of variety of vaccines. So medical experiments on human are definitely being conducted. So Max, from your perspective and from the years of your research on from your own experience firsthand, what are these medical experiments in the medical field again?
Well, it would be wrong not to mention Mengele and the experiments he did on the concentration camp victims, and then his experiments with twins and all of that. So that's a bit of a known piece of history, that this, guy did all kinds of horrific experiments. And then, of course, he was relocated to South America, where he continued to do this. And this was, his techniques were in fact incorporated into MK Ultra and the things I was just describing. But what I want to say is, if you know this and if you understand this, you begin to realize that they have been experimenting on all of us as a society. You don't have to be an SRA survivor forever. Okay, so even something as simple as chemtrails, that's an experiment. What happens if we spray them with this, if we spray them with that? Let's see. There have been experiments by the CDC that are out there. You can research them, like the Tuskegee experiment, where they deliberately put syphilis in the water in a small Black community, and they didn't treat it because they wanted to see, what does the syphilis do to the body if we let it run its course, right? Anything like the use of pesticides is an experiment, okay? They have experimented on, for example, reducing fertility globally, even before this COVID jab, which does it very, very directly, but with BPAs in plastics, with hormones, with chemicals that are added to the food. So the processed food that they give us is itself an experiment, okay, to see what it does to the body, what it does to the mind. Now, the medical system is, any kind of pharmaceutical pills that are given are themselves an experiment. And as you so correctly said, vaccines, right? And so vaccines have been given even before. This COVID one is really different, and it is absolutely targeted for creating fast-growing cancers and myocarditis and immune issues and early death and sickness. But vaccines have always been nefarious in their goals. This whole thing about SIDS, where children suddenly die in the crib, that's vaccine related, okay? And one of the things that I find very interesting is the direct correlation between the increase in childhood vaccines that you're supposed to give your child and the absolute increase in autism, which used to be rare. And I do feel that this is part of the transhumanist agenda. So because the autistic brain is a little more, it's different. It connects better with the transhuman idea of a brain that they want. So I think they're deliberately, then they have been experimenting. So they tried, and then some autistic people were too far gone. They were really unfunctional. So, okay, we'll adjust it. They want to make a kind of, as Starfire has said, because I've also interviewed her and that will be coming out, but a robotic version, like a biological human, but with a robotic, transhuman, easily manipulated, controlled, and programmed mind through these vaccines, but also through everything else that I have mentioned. Because, right now there's some of us like me and you and so many others that are very troublesome to them, because we're awake, because we're naming the things that they're doing, because we're speaking out, because we're trying to wake other people up. So this is not an ideal human population. They have done all these experiments to reduce our intelligence, reduce our consciousness, make us compliant, make us feel that they are authority. I mean, that the myth of authority is one big thing too. So think of the learned helplessness studies. There is the Stockholm syndrome where the abused person begins to adore their abuser because of that love bombing and trauma bonding that's created, which is created in the global population as well. And so all of this, I believe, if you look at Mengele and them, they were trying to create a specific human race, but this is what the transhuman agenda is, to create a specific human race that will be the perfect slave, that will do the functions that they are necessary to do with no problems, causing no problems for the elite. And I do believe that you can see this in a lot of the devaluation of women and the lowering of fertility over decades. And they want to eventually create babies in labs. This is technology that already exists. Babies can be grown in fake uteruses. Great source of children for rituals, for pedophilia, no more accountability. And along with all of this, I know it seems unrelated, but the destruction of the family is incorporated into this agenda because the future of human that they want will have no family, will have no gender, will not reproduce normally, and will serve their interests completely with no problems for them.
Thank you, Max. Definitely. So absolutely. And to mention also, you have mentioned Mengele. So, my friend's survivor also had a contact with him when she was small, and she was subjected to the experiment which he was held on her also after the Second World War. So I want to also clarify a little bit that for those who want to do their own research, if you think that it's Nazi doctors just were conquered, and that is absolutely not true. Under the name of Operation Paperclip, they were all, well, not all, but most of them, and definitely the most important ones, like Mengele, Werner von Braun, who became a head of NASA after all. So you can check this information on the internet. It's absolutely open. There is a brilliant book, which is the name itself, Operation Paperclip, which exactly in the very details, meticulously detailed, sometimes provide this information, how Nazi doctors actually continued their work, their medical experiments and their research just in other countries, including South America, North America, and many others around the world. I also know from my friend survivor that Mengele was traveling, so to speak, around the world and teaching the others about medical experiments and how to help them. So that story definitely wasn't over when the, so to speak, victory was achieved finally.
Yeah, yeah, no, he's so-called known as the angel of death, but absolutely all of these Nazi perpetrators were secretly brought into the United States, and the CIA and the MK Ultra program really and NASA come out of this group of people that they brought over. So all this research, if you think that, oh, we won World War II and there's no more experimenting like Mengele did, forget it. There's more. There's more, And, he did, and many other Nazis were also relocated in South America. And I grew up in South America. I lived in Argentina. I lived in Chile. I had family who lived in Paraguay. I've been to Brazil. How mysterious is it that in some very remote areas of Paraguay and of Brazil, where people are mostly indigenous, there are communities of blonde, blue-eyed people and an incidence of twins that is unrealistic if it were a natural occurrence. So, this is not only the United States and Germany, this is done all over the world. And, I can bring up someone relevant to many people today who's been supposedly a star character in the last few years, which is Dr. Fauci. Now, if you go do even the most minimal digging, you will find that this man has done brutal experiments on dogs, but also has experimented on orphans in New York by administering them AIDS to see what happens, how their immune system handle. They're studying these things because then they use them. I mean, this COVID injection basically causes a form of AIDS. It destroys the immune system. So how do they study all these diseases that they then release onto the population? They study them on people and on children. So, for example, orphans are an easy group. They don't have any parents. They're trapped in a location, and like we've spoken about in another episode, any organization or thing that works with children is going to be a resource, not just for trafficking, but for experimenting.
Thank you, Max. Exactly. But I was also wanted to mention that our previous episode was about human trafficking, and that's exactly also one of the goals and why it's so infamous in these days that those children from child care centers and so on who are left without parents or as a result of war, they are orphans. They've been subjected to these experiments, medical experiments. They have lines of generations of experiments, so it's not something new. And I would also mention regarding to vaccines that famous philosopher Rudolf Steiner, around 150 years ago, already mentioned that there will be vaccine which will disconnect human being from God, that will disconnect the soul, that will replace, that will substitute the soul. So this goal was already planned long time ago, and just what we say now, it's basically fruition.
Yes, and it has been going on. And the DARPA created that you can go research this, a vaccine called the standing for fundamentalist, which they said was a vaccine, and they were dropping it in via aerosol over the Middle East, so that according to them, it was to prevent religious zealotry, and that creates suicide bombers. So they developed something that can target the part of the brain, because everything spiritual has a manifestation in the physical. So there's a part of the brain that connects to the spiritual realms, one of it actually being the pineal gland. But they created this this vaccine to disconnect this, so that these people would no longer fight in the name of Allah or God or whatever you want to call it. So that's out there. The COVID injection has this in it as well. It's an attempt to disconnect, right? Even experiments like that brings me to remember the experiment of fluoride. Fluoride being an industrial waste and a neurotoxin, they didn't even know how to dispose of it. And somebody, because these people are psychopaths, came up with the idea, oh, we can put it in the drinking water for humans. And as a bonus, it will poison them. It will lower their IQ. There have been studies that prove this in children. It lowers IQ. And what a nice side benefit, according to what you're saying, that it calcifies the pineal gland, which is one of the ways that you can connect to other dimensions of yourself. So everything in our world, I hate to say it, we are being experimented on in every way that they can think of every day. We just don't recognize it.
Thank you, Max. To sum up a little bit, because we are sort of running out of time, that yes, medical experiments are being done on human race since a very, very long time. It's not only physical experiments, it's also psychological experiments, psychological operation, psyop as we call it right now. And it's being conducted, being done till the very this day. So when it makes me smile, and a sad smile, when I see this, for example, phrase that not tested on animals. Well, it's not tested on animals because it's tested on human. That's another story. And Max, again, I mean, we're all humans, and we don't know answers on everything. But what's your perspective on, if not how to end it right now, but just how to participate in this awakening about the truth?
Yeah, well, of course, number one, expose the truth so people know. It is also barbaric what they do to animals, to cats and dogs and rabbits and chimpanzees. It's just as bad as what they do to humans, and it's not acceptable. Okay, so do not buy anything that is tested on animals, and be aware of this fact so you can protect yourself if you're aware. Please do not eat any processed foods, any foods. Look at the ingredients. If a food has more than 3 or 4 ingredients, don't even buy it. All these names you've never heard of and these dyes and these things, if you see that on your food label, and they have to put it somewhat on the food label, but they can even be sneaky with that. So even when you buy organic things, you have to look, because Bill Gates has created this new toxic thing called appeal that now can go even on some organic foods and fruits, but it has a sticker. So you have to be very diligent with everything you buy that you put in your mouth, because that is going to negatively affect your health if you're eating their toxic food. Do not eat fast food. That is not actually even food at all. It causes massive inflammation in the body and illness because it's poison. A lot of fast food places, McDonald's has been caught that they actually have human meat in their burgers. So that's another thing. So watch what you eat. Try to buy straight from farms, support farmers. They're trying to destroy farmers. Do not buy anything processed, anything fast food. Do not drink sodas, Coca-Cola. It can be used as a cleaner because it's so toxic. It has so do not put these poisons in your body. Obviously, do not take vaccines. Please do not be a guinea pig for their experiments. COVID was a massive global experiment, and many, many people volunteered for this experiment. It was in the insert of the vaccine that these were clinical trials. People, that means it was an experiment, okay? Don't give your children any vaccines. Don't buy products that are toxic. You can begin to research these things. Try to wash yourself with the most natural things. Even your clothing, look at what the substances in there are. All these things can help. So do not consume the corporate products, and whatever the authorities tell you is good for you, doubt it. Assume maybe the opposite. So they told us salt is bad. Salt is actually very important. We have to have a lot of salt. And if you eat too much, you pee it out. So fat-free craze, fat is super important, particularly for the brain. So keep in mind that they are going to lie to you about everything. So do your own research. Trust your gut. Do not consume these things. Do not bathe in these things. Start to make your own. It's only been 100 years, maybe less than that we have stores that these products come from places we don't know. Start to meet your neighbors, start to grow different things, start to trade, live outside of the system as much as you can. But I would say mainly avoid vaccines, avoid pharmaceuticals, and avoid their food.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much. And again, that everything what you have said, again, brings us back to our own choices, responsibility, growing up, and maturity, because we have really to grown up and to make decisions for ourselves, not waiting until daddy government or mass media or TV experts in white coats will tell us what to do. Yeah. And that's how we will make it, that's how we will change it.
And Olga, one thing I think I really should mention is our bodies are designed to be self-healing. So if you are as healthy as you can be, you eat well, you exercise, you sleep, you take sun, you have to take sun, that's very healthy too, then your body will detoxify, will do the right thing. And the other piece is they try to very hard to disconnect us from the divine part of ourselves. So reconnect that part, because the divine self is not traumatized, is not poisoned, is the guide for us. So those are also things that are super relevant that we can do. We can reconnect to that part of ourselves. And when you rise in consciousness, which is when you do your inner work and learn the outer truth, at a level of consciousness that we can get to, there is no disease, there is no trauma. At that point, we live actually in a different reality. So I would be wrong if I didn't mention that too. That is the hope. That is the gift. That is the power that we have.
Thank you so much, huge, Max. Huge gratitude for everything as always, and see you next time.
See you next time, Olga.